All right. Welcome to another lovely episode of the Getting Defensive podcast. My name is Jerry Bell, and joining me today, as always, is Mr. Andrew Kellett.
Hello, Jerry. I see you are at your undisclosed southern location today, yet again.
Correct. And if you hear sounds, it's totally not people being buried. Totally not.
Do I have to testify now?
I hope not.
Anyway. Well, hey, welcome to our show. And we have an amazing guest today.
We do. But
As always.
before we do that, I do want to remind everybody that the thoughts all of us express on the show are ours and do not represent those of our employers.
Past,
And
present,
so-
or future.
So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to you to introduce our guest.
Thank you, Jerry. Today, we've got the one and only Amanda Berlin, who we've known for quite some time and has done some amazing things. And everybody gets an intro on the show. So this is where I get to flatter you endlessly. And hopefully I got this mostly right. So currently, Amanda is the Director of Incident Detection Engineering at Blumera.
That is,
that
yeah.
how I pronounce it? Blumera? I think that's right. All right. Where she leads the development of new detections based on threat intelligence and research. She's an accomplished author, speaker, and podcaster. She's known for her ability to communicate complex technical concepts in an accessible and engaging way for audiences of all backgrounds. Boy, we're going to put that one to the test today. On the spot. Co-author of the O'Reilly Media book, Defensive Security Handbook, which I believe is now in a second edition.
Which, by the way, is perhaps one of the best named books ever.
It's got good words in it.
I concur. I think so. Oh, it has a subtitle, Best Practice for Securing Infrastructure. And also the co-host of a fellow podcast, the Breaking Down Security podcast, which you've been on for many years. And look, we're friendly here. We bring competition on our show.
It's not a zero-sum game. We're all friends.
It's true. Mostly. Also even more impressively, that you're the CEO and co-founder of the Mental Health Hackers, a nonprofit organization that raises awareness about mental health issues in the cybersecurity community.
What
did I miss?
Know. Probably something, but that's good enough.
Well, we're so thankful to have you on the show today. You're one of our very early interviews, and when we were putting this concept together, we're like, we got to get Amanda. So if you said no, this entire thing might have been canceled.
Yeah,
we might have
you
just
only
given
had.
up.
Am I the only one that reached out, or no? No. I'm sure you had a flood of people. You're honestly one of the first security podcasts I listened to when I was getting into the space. I know. Before I was even podcasting.
That just means we're really old.
Yes.
No, I got in real late. It's fine.
Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And we've got a lot of amazing things to talk about. Feel free to continue to flatter us, though. That is always fun for us.
You flatter the hosts, and then it all goes well from there.
Yeah. So do you want to talk a little bit how you got into cybersecurity?
Totally.
What your path in was?
Yeah. So I was in help desk for a long time. Right. So that's always near and dear to my heart when people start out in the trenches. Back when, there would be, I worked at an ISP. So when there was old ladies calling into emergency support line at 2 a.m. and me helping them with their modem strings to connect so they could gamble. Yeah.
Right.
That was my first couple of years in tech. And then I worked at a hospital for over 7 years, where I worked up through help desk. I worked at like physician liaison, helping set up two-factor auth. worked in doing sysadmin, net admin, and was kind of going down the CCNA path. I wanted to just do routing and switching and firewall config for a living. And I actually had Dave Kennedy come to our hospital, and like before everybody knew who Dave Kennedy was, and do a pen test. And he let me watch the pen test.
Nice.
And I didn't realize there was an entire security field that I could go into. And then it was pretty much right then and there that I'm like, okay, networking's really boring. I want to go do security. And I was already doing defensive security. I just didn't know it was called that, right? Like I did like least privilege, and we were trying to get rid of our 30 domain admin accounts, and we were trying to do all the segmentation and all of these other kind of things to fix the very old and outdated and unsecure network. And so it was pretty easy transition into like a legitimate security role. And then after doing like security firewall config stuff, then I moved on and have been doing SIM and detection engineering for 8 or 9 years now. Yeah.
Wow. So you've got some years, and then you wrote a book.
And so
how was that process?
The whole thing was because after I left the hospital, I had done some like consulting roles in between, and helped make people's security programs better. And it turns out every place I walked into had the same problems. Imagine that the hospital had when we were there. I'm like, everything's messed up. Everything's always on fire. Why isn't there a place that I can go to that just tells me what to do, right? Because I was having to, all right, well, this is new. This is a Linux box. Like, where do I even start? Like, I've never been a Linux admin before. How do I work on securing that?
Yeah.
Or if I've never had to deal with like SQL. Like we have this random database that I guess somebody installed. How do I work on securing that? So it was a book I wrote to my former self that I wished I had had. That
nice.
After so long of doing it and consulting on it, that I realized there was kind of a lack of material around it. And that's how I met my co-author, Lee Brotherson. I was at a conference, met my editor, thought I wanted to write the whole book myself because it was something that was like on my 12-year-old bucket list for forever ago. I've always wanted to be an author, and I didn't think it was going to be a technical book. I thought I'd be writing like a novel or like kids' books or something. There are pictures in the book, but not fun ones. And I realized fairly quickly after starting to write what I wanted to see in the book that I didn't have subject matter expertise on a lot of them. But then when I met Lee, he had pretty much the competing skill set. Where I was a Windows admin, he was a Linux admin. Where I had done networking, he had done application security. So we kind of went down the list and pretty much were able to split the book half and half with the things that we knew. Some stuff was overlapping. But it was pretty great. And you're in the book, right? And I think you're actually
as like an example of what not to do.
I don't think they changed the forward. I'm pretty sure they didn't change the forward. Working with them the second time was interesting. So we'll just cover the first time. Yeah, you're totally also still in the second edition.
Awesome.
Yes.
Recycled.
Recycled. But it's okay. It's all.
Did I ever tell you that that's good. Yes. One of the guys I was working with happened to pick up your book independently, had no idea that I had contributed to it, and like went, Andy, is this you? I'm like, yeah. Like, what the hell? I'm like,
yeah, right.
I do other things.
Right.
I get around. I've been places.
Yeah.
You know people.
Yeah, so that was fantastic.
By the way, I was honored to be asked and very happy to contribute to the forward. And I'm
Me
glad they
too.
preserved it for the second edition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you did publish a second edition out. What have you, since you first wrote the book, what have you seen change? That prompted you
Yeah.
to create another edition, and what changes have you
Yeah,
seen
so
even
like
since then?
initially when we wrote the first one, we're like, all right, we've seen all of these same exact problems for so many years. We're not going to have to redo this in a while because security changes so often, and like the basics don't really that much, and people are still getting the basics wrong a lot. Like how many compromises happen from somebody not having a multi-factor off, right? But when we published the first one, I had a whole, like 4 pages on how to configure EMET for Windows XP because there were still a lot of Windows XP devices and a lot of issues with that, right? And we decided to like rip out some of that stuff that was more intense and focused on older OSs. And like I think there's 120 pages more in this one. There's a whole cloud chapter because before, like, cloud was there, but it wasn't in our target audience. It wasn't super accessible. It was very large infrastructure and large players were doing a lot of stuff in cloud, but everybody that would have needed this book probably didn't need to know about any of that. There was a lot more with like CI/CD pipelines and some of the automation that has come out since then. So there was a lot to add, and only a little bit that we had to remove because there's still like one of the sections that I get a lot of comments on for people that just like really, really appreciate it is just the beginning of where to start when you want to start a security program. Because there's still so many people that are the admin or just the really good tech guy that they're like, now security's yours. Good luck.
Yeah, I mean, that's where that book, I mean, I'm not just trying to like blow smoke. It really is a great primer if you've never even, if you don't know where to start. It covers so many different topics, enough to get you going in the right direction for sure.
If you've been in security for a long time, it's probably not for you. Like each one of the chapters could be its own book. And there are books. There's full books on a lot of these. Yeah. Like I talked to Don Murdoch before I wrote this, and he is the author of the Blue Team Handbook for Incident Response. And we have an IR chapter that's not replacing his book, but it's a good primer for his book. Right? So same example with the rest of them too.
Yeah. So do you sort of like compare notes with Lee of who gets the better comments on the sections each of you wrote?
After so long,
little competitive.
Almost forget who wrote what. Because I've read that book out loud at least 7 or 8 times. And then like we edited each other's stuff and I made sure to take out all the weird like English spelling that he did. So now...
Right. Because we fought a war to spell,
exactly.
to spell color properly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I won that argument. I got to take out all the extra U's.
So how... I know I'm stealing all the questions, Jerry, but how did the second edition come about? Did you reach out to O'Reilly? Did they reach out to you? Was it just
I'm a masochist, I think is just the short answer. No.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's a different podcast, but we can get you on that one too.
No. I just knew it needed some. I was disappointed it didn't have anything on cloud, and I had a couple people anytime somebody would ask if it's a good book, like that was my my warning. Like it's great, but there's nothing about cloud in there. So I knew I needed, and I had a running list of stuff that I over the last. I published the first one 7 years ago. I think so, 7 years ago. Just a running list of stuff that I wanted to add.
It's been that long.
Yep.
That's cool. That's cool. All right, Jerry, back to you.
So they've switched from hammers to jackhammers. So
Never mind. I'll keep going. You can.
Just type your questions and do we have
You
chat?
can't
Just
script
type
that
your
kind of comedy,
questions in chat.
right? That is hilarious. We picked the perfect day to record a podcast. All right. Anyway, so you also got so we've met at a lot of conferences and over the years, and one thing that we saw, I think from the early beginning, was the mental health tracks you did that turned into Mental Health Hackers, which is something I hear about from other people now, which is amazing. But like, what kind of spurred that? How did that start,
Yeah.
and what inspired you, and kind of how has that gone? I mean,
Yeah.
that could be a huge topic, but it's something that
Yeah, and
I
honestly,
think
that
matters
started
a lot.
not too long after the book was published. So I think I just was probably bored and
Yeah.
needed something else to do, right? As we all do.
Right.
I was asked to give my first keynote ever, and I was still a relatively new speaker, and I didn't think
Yeah.
great, but you get better over time with practice. And I wanted to pick something that would be beneficial for everyone that came. All right, keynote, everyone shows up, or everyone is in one room as opposed to being in all separate rooms for the talk. And prior to that, I was giving talks on the phishing program I put out there, and just regular defensive, like stuff that led up to the book. So here's 50 things that you can do defensively for your environment. So they're all like very defense specific practitioner talks. And I knew there was a larger audience, right, to reach. And around that same time, I was talking on social media and at conferences and stuff about struggles that I had been having and like realizations I had been having in my personal life around anxiety and depression. And with enough people that their response is when they hear like I was struggling with it, well, you can't have depression, like you're always happy. Because I do, like I always smile, I always joke, like I'm always pretty much in a good mood. And that's kind of when I realized, oh, people don't know that happens under, like, inside, even if you are happy on the outside. So
Sure.
my first talk was about kind of that. So it was what I had learned and what I had gone through. And then I had done some surveys in the community around how people felt about mental health and, how they felt about themselves and what they had dealt with, and kind of presented that in the talk. And I normally don't give talks more than once or twice because they're recorded. You can just point to somebody to the YouTube channel or whatever. But people kept on asking for me to give the same talk over and over. So in that year, I think I gave that talk 14 times. And every time had somebody come up to me and thank me because they thought they were the only ones struggling. So I thought, all right, I can't just I could just give the same talk over and over and over again. But instead thought that I could reach a bigger audience if I had like a workshop or something longer that people could come in and out of. And that was 2008, 17, 18. DerbyCon was the first mental health workshop thing that I did. It was just like me and some volunteers where they offered to give me 2.5 days instead of just the 4 hours that I was thinking. And then I'm like, oh, shoot, it's just me. How am I going to fill 2.5 days of content and other stuff? Like, what am I going to do with all this time? And then I did a GoFundMe because they wanted to give me like sponsorship dollars, but I also wanted to see how much interest there was in the community. So I did a GoFundMe just to see. And then I figured if that didn't work, I'd go and see if we could get some sponsors. And within like a week or so, we had over $7,000. So then the problem was, what am I going to do with 2.5 days and $7,000 to like make this worthwhile? And what came out of it is primarily where Mental Health Hackers came from. And we had a full talk track of people in the community talking about their personal experiences related to mental health. We had massage therapists, we had fidget table, coloring books, snacks, just like a quiet space. Because one of the things that I also talked about was after, I've been working from home for over 10 years. And when I go to a conference, and a lot of people also deal with this, not just me, you go to a conference and you're surrounded by people nonstop, and you can get so overwhelmed. And it's nice to have a place to kind of just chill out and not have to worry about like just constant information coming at you. And then after that first year, it was all said and done. I didn't imagine this would be more than 1 year. You know, how many years later? I just had people come up to me and ask, how do I have this at my conference? We need a space like this, or how can I help? How can I volunteer? How can I donate? All of that. And that's when we decided to make it a nonprofit, because like I didn't do the first one necessarily just for me, right? Like I wanted to do it giving back to the community. So yeah, every penny that we get in, we put back into the community in one way or another. And then COVID happened, and that went our whole model for a couple of years. We did some stuff online, but it's not quite the same because during COVID, we were all trying to get away from Zoom meetings more. And they didn't want another one. So that's how it went. And we are a part of conferences all over the place. I just did one, what was I had? That was all over the place recently. I had a table at GurCon in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We went to Blue Team Con in Chicago. Yeah, so I have volunteers and people that run them in other states and other countries. It's been really great, I think.
So you got minions worldwide now.
Yes.
I
know.
The Amanda army is growing.
Days. And then I'm glad, Jerry, you put your question in the chat. So do you want me to read it, or do you want to read? Do you want to read it, Andy?
Oh, no. I don't think I can read it.
Got it? Okay.
Where is it? Here it is. I'll read it.
You have to read it in the Jerry
yeah,
voice,
no. What do you think are the major causes for people to struggle in this industry? Is it changing? And why do you think Andy is one of the best co-hosts in podcast?
Two very good questions, Jerry. Thank you. Major causes in this industry. So a lot of us are very passionate and tend to overwork because of being passionate. It's super, super common to have people, not just in security, but also in tech, to their hobbies are also the same thing they do for work. Yeah, mine for the longest time was, right? I was just doing conferences and CTFs and writing, reading, listening to books, podcasts, whatever, and that was it. I didn't have much else that I was doing, and you don't realize how much of a toll it can take on you as far as like burnout goes. So that's a big one. We're also very still heavily weighted male field, MALE, not MAIL, and and men are less likely to seek help. So that doesn't help at all fix any of the issues. Yeah, but I can definitely tell you, since starting Mental Health Hackers, I've never been cried on by so many people, which is great. It
Was that a
wasn't.
particular goal that you had?
I didn't realize that would be something that I would approve of so much, but yeah, just people.
Have you considered making that like a fundraising goal, like
I
$1
could
for every
totally do
tear
that.
that you put on my shirt?
Yeah, just and happy tears,
You
sad
know,
tears, just relief tears, just people
right?
that I have known for forever or people that I've just met will just come up and like spill their hearts out
Yeah.
and like just want a hug. And it's like, I hate crying myself. So it's very like very brave and like courageous of those people to be able to do that. And I get to be a part of it.
Nice. Do you? That is cool. You mentioned burnout. Do you think that's kind of the main problem we have in the industry?
I'd say one of the higher ones for sure. I mean, in the States at
Yeah.
least, there's a not great access to mental health care at all, depending on how
Yeah.
lucky or privileged or whatever situation that you're in that you may have access to it. A lot of people don't, even if they have good jobs, it might just not be covered. I know for the longest time, like out of pocket, I was paying for me and two kids to go to therapy. It was like $600 a month, right?
Wow.
Which not, I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't want to afford for long. So that's a big
Yeah.
one because that kind of helps cover burnout, but it also like think about all of the breaches that have happened and like the CISOs have gotten fired or the security team has gotten fired. And you always have to worry, like there's just this overlying or underlying worry that you have of, oh crap, if I miss one thing or if I make one wrong move, that could potentially be it for my career. So that
Right.
also, yeah, that also is brought up a ton.
And also, I mean, just to riff on that for a second, we also in defensive world can't always control
No,
all the variables that go into that. Like and nor should we, but we are often in a position where we have to take accountability and responsibility for something
right.
we don't have full authority over, which I think can
Yeah,
add to a lot of stress
yeah,
for sure, at least in my world. And you mentioned uh, mental health resources, and you also mentioned that men often don't seek it out. I gotta tell you, a lot of companies I've worked at have offered mental health resources as part of like employee services. I personally have always been reluctant to use them, and I think a lot of people are that. There. I think there's at least in Western culture this concept that a man should just know how to tough it out. And I wonder
yeah,
if that
definitely.
contributes a
That's
bit
why
sometimes.
that's why a lot
But
of men don't seek help, and it's interesting too because I'll go in with I have a 16-year-old that goes to regular therapy, and I'll go in with him, and like he didn't want to go for the longest time, and then we went
yeah,
through 4 different therapists, and we finally found one that he's like, oh, this doesn't feel like therapy. I really like this. Like I'm learning a lot from this person. He thinks like me. He knows kind of what I'm going through, and I think it's a light that comes on because it's hard. It's really hard sometimes to find a good therapist that clicks with you. It's almost worse than dating,
yeah.
right? Because like you have to find somebody that you
So
jive with and that you can trust and
yeah,
that can help you. And it's a lot of work sometimes.
yeah. So when you say you went through four of them, did the first three run away screaming,
I mean,
or
not run.
Did they run away at
just like
all? Were they able?
They
Were they
they
able to
they
run?
didn't run. There's a little bit of
oh, I
professional
can't.
courtesy, I think. You just close the door and lock it
So
behind you.
I'll say for me, it I had to I had to get to a pretty bad place before I sought help, and I suspect that is a common common situation for many people. So w- has the mission for your organization changed or evolved? How is How would you
I
describe
don't
that?
think the mission has, because we've always been about like peer support. We do have some actual mental health um, like professionals that are volunteers in our organization, but we're very just peer support driven. So it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm in a crisis. I can call mental health hackers and they're going to help me. We don't do that.
Right.
And you wouldn't want that. I would probably tell you, I don't give the best advice unless it's defensive security related. Yeah, so we've always tried to stick with that peer. It's all about the peer support. It's people that do the same things that you
Okay.
do on a daily basis that you can talk to about it and talk and see what works for them, right? Because like I'll talk about how yoga and a schedule and using 10 calendars helps my mental health, but that's not the same for everybody else.
Yeah, it makes sense. Kind of follow up on that, which I know you just said you don't give specific advice. So I'm going to ask you to give specific advice. Uh,
Yeah.
but you're close to this. And I think people are really interested in this topic. And do you see common misperceptions that a lot of people have about mental health challenges in our field, or, in around what you
Yes.
see?
Definitely that you have to be having a problem to go talk to a therapist, right? There has to be something wrong with you.
Hmm.
You have to be in crisis. To Jerry's point, like you don't have to wait until the end, like until you're hanging on by a thread to go see somebody. When I first started dating my partner, like 3 months in, they're like, all right, this is going somewhere. Let's go see a couple counselor. And we started seeing a couples counselor
Wow.
very early on in our relationship because neither of us wanted to mess it up. And you can do that with yourself too, right? You can be in a really good spot because then you can kind of see the bad things coming before they happen.
Right. I don't know how I'd react if a
It
brand
was
new
his idea
relationship
too.
partner to me said, "Hey, we need to go to counseling."
Yeah.
It was his idea. Wow. I mean, that's great. I think it's an amazing idea, but it's like, I think a lot of people, just back to your point, assume that if you're going to
Yes.
counseling, something's wrong. If you're going to couples counseling,
Yeah.
you have a broken relationship. Not you're trying to make it better. Not you're trying to make it stronger.
Right.
Not trying
And
to
that's
make
what
the
my
best
mom
of
thought. That's what my kids thought. They're like, I thought things were going well. Like, why are you going to couples counseling?
Right.
Because it's a good idea.
Well, I mean, with your kids, I can understand they go to counseling because, I mean, you raised them. So I
preaching to
get
the
that
choir,
connection.
man.
Wow. I kid with
The oldest didn't
love.
go to counseling. He just went to the Marines instead.
Hey, stressful way to work out
Yes.
your stress. Oof, yeah. No, that's any other serious misconceptions though,
Serious
before I get too silly,
misconceptions.
or common, I should say, common misconceptions.
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. Yeah, I'm sure I'll think of them
Yeah, no
after we're
worries.
done recording.
Of
Yes,
course, but we can
in
edit
post.
it in. Like, Jerry, did you have a next question?
Well, I'll
yell.
try. I'll give it a
Sounds
try.
like
So just one further thing on therapy. The thing I learned was, it's all about learning coping skills, and it's kind of like not waiting until the description I think in a book I read was, like not waiting until your garden is overgrown with weeds to ask for help on how to keep the weeds out of your garden. Like, if you can keep it, you pull weeds a few at a time, like you're a lot better off. So I think that was what I got out of it. And I found, by the way, it was super interesting for me. I had the same kind of at the same time I was going through therapy. I was also engaging a dog trainer for my dog, and I realized that the counselor I was seeing was basically doing the same thing my dog trainer was doing. It was fascinating. So anyway,
My main question.
So that's why you started wearing a collar?
Do you know how to heal yet?
Right.
So that was anyway. I think it has some stigma that is not warranted, and I think to your point, it's important, and if you have that available to you, it's you should definitely take advantage of it. That's my and Jerry's advice. So one thing I did want to get back to in the kind of in the waning moments that you literally wrote the book on defensive security twice, not just once but twice. What advice do you have for people?
Read the book, obviously.
High level. Well, obviously, not just read it, but buy it. I mean, several times.
It makes a wonderful Christmas gift for all your friends and family.
Off of the selling of them, I've actually gone on Pirate Bay and other sites and commented on the torrents. Like, I'm glad y'all like this. Please buy me a beer next time you see me. Because it does. Right. It gets downloaded illegally a lot. But my main pieces of advice are first, asset management's super hard. Pretty much no one has it right. Period. Just because, unless you have even me, like in my house, I probably have 50 or more IoT devices, right? Do I have them all listed? No. Like, could I go find them? Probably. But in a organization, your threats are a little bit more serious than they are here at home. So trying to at least get a handle on asset management is a big one. Of course, my last 8 years have been in the depths of logging. If you have Windows hosts, install Sysmon. It's probably one of the best things that you can do if you are have any SIM at all or ever want to figure out what happens during an incident on your Windows hosts, is install Sysmon and get a good config. Swift on Security has a good config. There's one called Sysmon Modular that we usually use. And then I would say number 3 is making sure everyone has MFA turned on, not just some people. Those are my top 3 recommendations. And they hold true. Yeah, those held true 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. That seems like good advice.
This is not a thing, I think 10 years ago. It's 2011, I think it came out. So yes.
That's good stuff. So with your current role, and if you want to talk about incident detection at all, like, what do you see as, sort of like, for a slightly more mature org, the most effective sort of incident detection, threat hunting, engineering type of stuff that you like to see people doing that you think will help them during or after an incident?
I know. Yeah.
I like to ask the really tough questions and then just sit back and listen. It's great.
Fix all the problems. No.
Sorry.
So detection engineering in title is fairly new. It's not really been a full role for a very long time. So most programs are fairly immature. I mean, we've been doing it, like, that's been my primary job and my team's primary job for 6 years. And we're still maturing and trying to, and we come at it from a different angle, right? Because we are trying to protect all of our customers with the same detection rule set versus if you were one organization doing it just for you. Either way, there's
Sure.
some really good frameworks out there that you can use. The Sigma rules have been out there for a while, but those are, if you don't really know what you're doing and you just ingest all of the free Sigma rules, your sim is going to light up like a Christmas tree because it's just really noisy and not tuned to what you're doing. What we're doing is trying to map against MITRE and pick the most important like attack paths that we've seen, tie them to threat actors, that kind of stuff. And we're just recently getting to a place where we can do a lot of automation around our detections. So it's detections as code, tested in bulk, and not manually. My team is very happy about that. And you can use things. So vector.io is a good one that you can use that we've used over the years, that you can pull in like the whole MITRE ATT&CK framework, and you can log and test and see where you can detect and defend against all of them. So as long as you're tracking against something and trying to automate what you can, I think those are the more mature organizations that I've seen. I do have a book recommendation though. So my CFO for Mental Health Hackers is Megan Roddy, and she worked for a long time at IBM X-Force and is at, I know she just recently moved. I can't remember where she went. Datadog, maybe? I can't remember. But she wrote the Practical Threat Detection Engineering book. So that's my book recommendation.
Nice.
I still haven't read it though. I'm sorry, Megan. But it's on my book. It's on my bookshelf. Yeah, so that's a good one to read too if you're trying to make
very cool.
Make it a little bit more mature.
Excellent, good stuff. I did have one more or two more on the mental health front, if I could ask. So we can kind of bundle these together. I had in my notes, what do you... Why did it just turn off? I didn't say you could turn off. Turn back on. Let me try this again. What do you think employers or organizations should be doing to help support the mental health?
That's a good one, because I hear from so many people about bad cultures. And I have a couple different talks that are focused directly towards the C-suite and upper management on a lot of stuff that you can do. So one of the resources that I usually recommend is called workplacementalhealth.org. It has full programs that you can use and ideas of stuff that you can implement into your programs. It has things like, here are the medical codes that you need to check and make sure that your healthcare covers. There's a lot there. Yeah, and
interesting.
And having change come from the top. The healthiest, most resilient organizations are going to have upper level management that are okay when people act like people and they act like people themselves. So actually showing people that it's okay to take vacation. For example, we shut down twice a year. Other than major incidents, right? Blumera shuts down for a week in the summer and a week in the winter, and it's basically just forced vacation for everybody because we talked about how passionate people are in this industry. We're known to not use that PTO,
right?
What's the word I'm thinking of? The unlimited PTO that we all get but never use. So building things in like that to your culture helps a lot. Because it's kind of setting a precedence of, okay, you're not going to treat me like I have to be 100% of the time. You know I'm a person and I need to take like real time off.
Yeah, I agree. Although it's interesting, at least at my level, often taking time off, I get punished for it because that same
Mhm.
amount of work still has to get done.
hmm
And it just sits there. And now I've got a big pile of work to come back to,
But
which
then
I'm
nobody's
trying to figure
supposed
out
to
how
be
to
there to
solve.
make
But
more work for you. But
yeah, well,
yeah,
that's a good point.
I mean,
That's a good point.
even a week with no
No, it's a
meetings would be
great
great,
answer.
right?
Is that
Like
legal?
during
I
this
don't think
week,
that's
no
possible.
meetings. No? Okay. All right.
No, it's crazy talk. Sorry. I mean, if you want to live in your fantasy land of no
I know it makes
meetings,
my life so much better when I don't have meetings for a day.
no, it's true. I've been at some organizations that have like one
Oh
specific
yeah.
day of the week where they try to avoid meetings, and
Yes.
it's lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, second question on this, and then I think Jerry has one too. What are good self care or coping strategies you would recommend to folks who just throughout their day, are
Get up and
stressed?
go outside. No, like
Mhm.
then just leave.
And
Get up
never
and
come
go.
back? Okay.
No,
All right. Oh,
fresh
sorry.
air, like some sort of
Yeah.
outsideness without screens is a huge game changer. That a lot of my hobbies now
Mm.
are not tech related. I miss some of them, but you can kind of balance if you really want to. So, like I do a lot of
Mhm.
drawing, I do a lot of exercise. Keeping to a schedule has really helped me. So, one of the things that can really boost your serotonin levels is exercise. So, just movement of any kind, whether you're just want to go for a walk or if you like riding bikes. I love yoga and like Pilates. Anything like that helps
Nice.
because it's going to raise those levels. Um, what else? I tried meditation, didn't work for me. My brain just doesn't shut
Mm.
off, but it does work for some people. My meditation is like the only time I can not think about stuff is when I draw, and it took me 35 years or however old I was when I started drawing to like realize that, because even when I exercise, I'm thinking about work or stuff I have to do or my kids or something, right? But finding something for you that will help you turn off your brain if it's like mine and never shuts up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Tangentially, maybe somewhat related. You talked about what like at an organizational level, what they can do, but if you bring it down a level to like managers, what can managers do? Even I guess whether or not their organization is
Yeah, and
kind of on the bus.
make sure your team knows it's okay to talk about those things, even if they don't want to give you specific details. Um, we do a thing where if you are overwhelmed or ready to like rage quit or just are not in the headspace or whatever, um, we call it free for all, where like doesn't matter 4 hours a week together or separate, whatever, you could cancel whatever you're doing and get up and walk and like get away from your desk, get away from work, and opening that up and doing it yourself and knowing that it's okay to talk about is a huge game changer, because like small teams, big teams, whatever, as long as you start talking about it, nobody specifically has to say this was going through my head and this is all the things on my plate and this is what I'm worried about. They don't have to give like all of the specifics if they don't want to, but giving the freedom to just do something simple like that. It doesn't have to be a policy. It doesn't have to be whatever. Just the ability to do something, it makes all the difference.
That's great. So, how can people support?
Oh,
Like
sure.
everything else
I
you
mean,
got
like
going
you
on?
said, buy the book or me a beer anytime.
Yeah.
We are going to be looking for official sponsors for Mental Health Hackers. We're trying to get to DEF CON. We've been there in an unofficial capacity a couple times and kind of did our own little side things, but a lot of people have reached out to us and asked if we could be there officially. So we're going to try and get that going, which we'll need official sponsors for because that's a big deal. We also, a lot of times, have volunteer opportunities. If you want to run one of these mental health villages, we can ship kits out. And we have all of the stuff. We have how to set it up and tear it down and to-dos and not to-dos in the rooms, like all of this kind of stuff. So we're always looking for volunteers to run in places because I can't do all of them. Or I need my real paycheck. So I can't just fly everywhere and do these villages. And what else? We also sometimes have online get-togethers. So we've done sip and paints before. We've worked with Sober and Cyber and done like a sip something other than alcohol and paint activities. So those are always really fun. We'll ship out paint kits to people. And even if you've never painted before, people just show up and have fun. And yeah, just come out and see us when we're at a conference.
Nice. How can people get in touch with you to like request a kit if they wanted to?
Let me think of the right. I think it's info@mentalhealthhackers.org. You can just go to mentalhealthhackers.org and there's like information there on how to contact us and everything else.
Great. Excellent. Very cool. So we're starting to wind down here because we want to be respectful of your time. This has been amazing. What haven't we asked you about that you want to talk about, or anything else that you got going on that gets you really excited?
So something that I've also been doing at work. So I'm not just the detection engineer director. I also have been put in charge of doing a large portion of our product, like ownership. Yeah.
Wow.
So I've been doing a lot of product stuff. That being said, one of the things we just released is a domain security assessment. So if you... yes.
You mean like DNS domains?
So it's an AI-generated domain security assessment that will tell you if you put in your domain, the subdomains and the vulnerabilities and probably what you should check out. And it's just kind of like a free assessment that you can do. So if you want to do me a favor, fill that out and I'll see a huge influx. I wish you could just like put Amanda told me to come here because that would be great.
How do people find that?
Blumira.com/DSA. Let me make sure. Blumira.com/DSA. Yep, totally is. I knew that.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll tell Jerry to put in the show notes.
Yeah, so that's something cool that we got to release. It's nice. I like working here because it's a place that doesn't mind releasing free things that will help. Right? Like one of the first things that I released was a group policy that you could import to turn on a bunch of logging. Right? Like I like being able to release and contribute back to the community, even if it doesn't mean that we're going to get a sale out of it, which those are the kind of vendors that I want to work with and want to work at.
Sure.
So yeah, that's just one of them that I'm sure if like you put your email in there, you'll get a sales email, but you don't have to feel obligated unless you want to tell them how awesome I am. And then,
and it seems,
totally,
we recommend, but it does seem like fewer and fewer companies are sort of doing that sort of contribution to the industry these days. They're out there,
unfortunately.
Indeed. Well, I mean,
hookers
and blow ain't cheap.
I don't know what level of directorship do I get to when I get that for free, like included in my compensation package?
I'm going to just let that one go because I'm afraid to say anything.
VP level. When I get to VP level,
I would love to, but then I realize
yeah.
the internet
No.
is
No, not a
forever,
VP
and I'm
level.
on video.
No, not a VP level. I can definitely say that.
I think if you're in sales, it's a whole different compensation tier.
I don't want to be in sales.
That's the
I
key.
can't do that. I'm too honest.
I did.
Did you?
I did sales engineering for 10 years.
I feel like you have a good poker face, though.
I did, and I mean, I'll be very honest with you. I got a lot of my sales guys did not like me because I was probably a little too honest with my customers. Yeah, and I was more interested in trying to help the customer test the product to see if it met their needs
That's
than I
what
was
sales managers are supposed to do.
Getting the sale sometimes. Well, I mean, in my own version of reality, my customers loved me and my sales guys hated me. So, but I mean, in all honesty, I got burnt out on it because I just had a lot of salespeople who were just really difficult to deal with, and it wasn't the right fit for me. I knew it. And I mean, I had other SEs tell me, and they weren't wrong, that I didn't have the right mindset for a sales engineer. But I learned a lot. Yeah. I learned a lot about that side of the business. It was very educational.
Truth, like way too bluntly.
Yeah. I'm with you. I mean, I've certainly tempered my bluntness as I've gotten more into leadership and found more effective ways to communicate. But I still am always trying to be truthful and honest and, clear, but not. I've tried to sand down some of my rough edges. I don't know how effective I've been. Yeah. Anyway,
when I get to your age,
about me, but
eventually I'll have that roughness.
I'm not sure the internet will still exist when you get to that age.
It's a long time away.
Well, this has been amazing, Jerry. Any final questions?
Nope. Just how do I make this?
Are they getting closer to like the demo being done at least? You can't see them. You can just hear them.
I haven't been out there and.
Okay.
Correct. They're on the other side of a wall.
Have you tried thermite?
We're in a high rise, so I'm trying to try not to bring the building down.
That's fair. That's probably wise. Well, Amanda, this has been a great conversation. Where can people find out more about you and all the cool stuff you're doing?
You can find me mostly on LinkedIn now, which is a weird thing to say. I have been a little bit more active on the formerly known as Twitter, but either Amanda Berlin or at InfoSystir, INFOSYSTIR.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on our show, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you for
having me. We'd love to have you back sometime.
When it's big.
Well, I was more thinking when you've forgiven us for this event, and
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Amanda.
Since Jerry's in major construction zone, I'll wrap us up. Thank you for joining us for this conversation with Amanda Berlin. You can find her online at mentalhealthhackers.org. You can find out her LinkedIn for Amanda Berlin, Berlin. You can find her at InfoSystir. And hey, if you like the show, tell a friend. This is a new format for us. We're still kind of settling in. Our main show is always going to be here, but we are trying to do this where we pull in some amazing people to hear from because Jerry and I are running out of interesting things to say. So there's far more interesting people in the world, and finally they'll talk to us. We're finding one of the cool kids. So if you like the show, tell a friend, give us a podcast rating. We're trying to get it out there. And if you don't like the show, tell us. We'll try to make it better. So with that, thanks so much. Until next time, Jerry, Andy, and Amanda saying bye.